Oh, John, Grove House. Do you know anything about Grove House?
Small bit. It's one of the oldest buildings in Westport. One of the original buildings, I think. It was the home of John Gibbons, the 1798 leader. And following him, it was part of the Glendinning organisation within it. Later on, it became a school, the forerunner of the vocational schools, whatever that name they had.
And who had it when it was the school?
I think it was actually, it was still in the ownership, I believe, of the Courts or the Gibbons family. The Gibbonses had some hold on it until 1910, I'm told. Yes. And then the Christian Brothers took it over and
did they use it as a school or a residence?
Well, they took it as a residence.
A residence. And when did they take it over? Any idea?
I'd say around 1910.
Well, not that far back, yeah?
No, not that far back. Before that, it was a school. I don't know what the name was that used for previous to the VEC.
Do you know?
It was a domestic school.
Domestic school.
We used to go in there apparently to learn how to go into service.
And who was it run by? Clergy?
I
Nuns?
think it was by the nuns at that
By
stage.
the nuns.
And then in 1920 the Christian Brothers took over.
1920. And there was a Mrs. Gill who taught there. Frank Gill's and Pierce Gill's mother.
Okay.
You know her?
I know.
She came as a teacher there. Now this is the story I used to learn when I was a young lad growing up.
Tell us about Gibbons. Who was Gibbons?
Gibbons was a land owner, and he was connected with Sligo Estate, or the Earl of Altamont as he was then. And he was secretary of the United Irishmen League or something like that organisation that was pre-1798. And he went with the French immediately in 1798 when the French landed. He got a lease of that place from the Sligo Estate in 1780. You, the purchasers of the place, you probably have all this on paper.
Yeah, they said 1770 they took it over, and I think part of it was built in 1770. And then when he left, George Clendenning moved in.
Yes.
When did he move in?
In 1783, I think. And the original house is still in the basement of the house.
That's right.
So George Clendenning then built what was termed in those days a mansion on the house.
All round about it.
Yeah, and turned it back to front.
Yes. I think Mill Street was much lower then than today. You see the basement windows looking out there, and the street has been raised.
So that was the street level.
That was street level. Yeah, the original street level was lower than the present, and we used to hear that the road originally went to the front of us. I don't know.
That's right, is that right?
It could be because, well, what I heard was that when Clendenning built the house, his daughter was killed in a riding accident on the hill. And
Yes.
apparently he built the house facing the hill, Monument Hill, so he could look out and think of her when he built it.
Was there a monument on that hill? Somebody told me there was a monument on it.
Yes, there was a monument to her. That occurred in 1813, I think.
Was it 1813?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's the date I have in my mind now for that incident.
Okay.
Where she was a youngster, 12 or 13 years of age. And there was a plaque, I understand, on a wall up there that has collapsed. But there was a monument, and that's why it's known as Monument Hill up there.
Okay.
And Monument View and all these names. That is the monument they're referring to.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I only found out in the last day or two that he died when he was 75 in 1843, wasn't it?
Clendening,
Yeah,
that's possible, yes.
and the house was only finished in 1840. So
He didn't get much time in it.
no, but he lived there for a long time. But it took so long to do it.
Or to finish it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be so. Then whether the school authorities added onto it or not, I don't know. The bank moved out of it in 1851,
What bank was that now?
Bank of Ireland.
And how did that get in there?
Well, Clendening was a private banker, and he joined up. He was agent for Latouche, and Latouche family started the Bank of Ireland. There was trouble in the banking world at that time, and the Bank of Ireland was set up, and it had permission to go countrywide. The first branch was in Limerick, the second was in Westport.
Okay.
And that was by absorbing the Clendening organisation into it. And they moved down to the present day, the present Bank of Ireland, or the building we knew as the Bank of Ireland on the Mall, around 1851.
To go back to John Gibbons was the original guy, was he? John Gibbons, yeah? That built,
John Gibbons was the original guy, apparently.
that built the house, that
Yes.
built the road.
No,
And he was he an agent or was he a landowner in his own right?
he was a landowner in his own right. He had big leases and big incomes in his own right. He had.
And
The
how,
Urban Council took over the Livingston property there and for the car park and all that. Joe King was his solicitor, and Joe King stumbled on this weird name of Fort Washington. Have you heard about it? You ever heard the name?
I've heard of it, yeah. I've heard of
but I
it.
don't know.
Go on, yeah.
No. He came to us to see if there was any, came to Jared Duffy to see if there was any explanation why the big slice of Westport should be called this name. At the time, it took a long time to get to the root of it. And then when Gibbons got into trouble and escaped to France, he made his will out in what's now Belgium in 1809 or something, and he described himself as being of Fort Washington, Mill Street, Westport, County Mayo. Now, again, the way things get tangled up, the commander of the British forces in the American War of Independence was Howe, Admiral Howe. Admiral Howe's daughter was married to the first Lord Sligo,
Right.
down here. And one of his victories was the Battle of Fort Washington. Fort Washington was in New York. It was a barrier that they had across the river from Manhattan, across the Hudson, to Fort Washington on Manhattan Island, to Fort Lee on New Jersey side. And that was to prevent the British getting access to the American Midlands by going up the river and sailing on up through Central America. So Howe succeeded in capturing that. And there's a big bundle of correspondence in London about his victory. But of course they don't mention that a few months afterwards Washington captured it back again. It's known as the Battle of Brooklyn Heights.
Okay.
If you want to go into it.
And how did Gibbons get involved in republicanism if he was a landowner in Westport?
Couldn't tell you.
It's strange, isn't it?
All these guys, no, they won't get shot for saying it or not. They're the front of each camp.
That's what I was going to say. They're like the French.
We're betting both sides.
Exactly. He escaped when he. There's a letter in the Patton correspondence. The Pattons sheltered his daughter here in Westport during when the British recovered Westport, and she travelled away out into Connemara one night to visit the father, and she had to walk so many miles, etc., etc. Now, he escaped to France. He escaped from Lord Sligo's yacht. You see, that's not spelled out. So you say.
Did he steal it or was he given it?
I believe the record was a crew with it, and they were officially fishing, and they threw out the nets coming in on the return back, caught a lot of herons, and we were out fishing. I don't know, that was the story I've heard.
Yeah.
Now, of course, he probably made contact with a French ship or something when he got out to sea, but Lord Sligo's yacht brought him out.
And who was executed then? Who was the Gibbons that was executed for the...
His son.
His son was it?
His son. The son carried out guerrilla warfare out in Connemara, and he was captured as a weapon in Roulais.
Roulais.
I think it's Roulais. And he was hung there someplace, top of Beats or somewhere.
Was he hung there in that little triangle there where they're going to...
I don't know, they have mentioned different places.
Okay, they're not sure.
I don't know.